Yeah, coming through as streaming.
Okay, got it. Great. Well, welcome everyone. So thanks for joining us today at Forward VC's Climate Techie Sustainable Innovation Series session. We've got Hugh from Net Zero, and shortly I'll be just passing it over to him so he gets to run the show. So you don't have to hear too much from me. But just a little quick note about Forward VC. So we are building up the ultimate climate techies ecosystem. So all in the hope of getting as much collaboration and support around the climate tech movement to make sure that we are all fighting climate change together. We've got people joining in from Lake Ontario. That's awesome. Thanks, Brody. And yeah, with Forward VC, we are hoping that we can really accelerate the fight to climate change. And we think we can do this by doing this together. So our motive is to build up this giant climate tech ecosystem. So if you haven't already, please join our Climate Techies ecosystem. You've got the links behind me. I need to look which way I'm pointing. And without further ado, we have wonderful partners like Net Zero who really want to support us and our community in that session, in that movement as well. So we hold these innovation series to help the community with like services and products and knowledge around areas that can help people within the climate changing fight. And without further ado, I will pass it over to Hugh to introduce himself and kick things off today.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Thank you indeed. And look, thank you for having us, really. It's great to be part of this ecosystem, and it really aligns with what we believe about tackling this issue. It's the world's largest challenge, and we're not going to do it individually or as one company. We need to do it together. So it really is a pleasure to be part of the ecosystem and have an opportunity to support by presenting today as well. So a bit of background for myself and also Net Zero before we dive into the presentation. I'm the VP of Sales at Net Zero. We are a startup, so the job title is one thing. What I do day to day tends to cover many areas of the business, but primarily dealing with our large engagements, so big companies, trying to help them plot decarbonisation. And one of the themes we've been seeing really is an inability to take action. We'll come onto that in the presentation, but data issues are a real challenge for large businesses, and we're utilising AI, the world's sort of best or greatest technology at the moment, to help solve that climate change challenge. And we'll get into some more detail on the PowerPoint, but that's really the idea behind what we're doing. How can we utilize data and analytics and AI to help organizations drive action? And the best way to do that, especially right now, is to align sustainability with profitability. How can we help companies make decisions quicker? And the easiest way to do that is make them no-brainer business decisions and align it with profitability. So that's a bit of background to myself and to Net Zero. I will be sharing my screen now, going through a presentation. I'm more than happy for people to ask questions as we go, keep it interactive. We're going on a bit of a journey from where we are now, where we need to be, and how we're going to get there. So there'll be different parts of the presentation. So if anything is new to you or that you want some clarity on, please do fire away with any questions. More than happy to keep it interactive as we go. So let me share my screen. Just been doing a test run with Nadia, so hopefully it goes as well. It didn't go that smoothly, did it, Nadia? But hopefully we've got it go smoothly now.
Good
So
enough.
if I go there, is that as we expect, Nadia?
That looks great. Yes.
Perfect. Alrighty. So as everyone hopefully knows at this stage, the theme of today's webinar is really how we're looking to align sustainability with profitability, and really why it's imperative if organizations are going to achieve their sustainability goals. Because one of the themes that we're seeing, and you may have seen this yourselves, you may be struggling with it as an organization yourself, is how can we move from measuring and reporting through to actually taking action? We're behind the curve really when it comes to the Paris Climate Agreement, and life seems to be getting harder for businesses to actually make decisions. So we're looking to build, and we've built a tool that actually launched today on our website. So it's an exclusive to take a look at things today, but really driving that action. How can we support businesses to go beyond regulatory frameworks and actually take action within their business? And that's why it's key to really align sustainability with profitability. So let's just dive in to the next slide. So why is this now the time to be sort of looking at aligning sustainability with profitability? It's no longer a nice to have. So we actually built this slide when I joined the company. It's actually pre-me, I think, well over a year ago, so probably about a year and a half ago now. And it was originally sustainability is becoming a requirement. I changed it because I think that's already out of date. It is a requirement now. It's driven by stakeholders, it's driven by customers, it's driven by regulations, and really every stakeholder within a business is scrambling for this. And we really need to get it towards it being a core part of every business. On the timeline there, it's showing now we're still in the regulatory aspect, which we are to a certain extent. Carbon taxes will be coming. ESG disclosures are here, but when they become mandatory, that's going to put even more pressure on businesses. And it's an ever-evolving space. So we can't really rely on regulations necessarily to force that change. So what we wanted to do as a business is go beyond that and say, well, how can we help businesses go beyond that themselves without regulations forcing it? Because the opportunities are here now. We'll talk about this a bit more later, but historically, sustainability has been seen as a cost, as a tough thing to crack, as a reporting and compliance issue. But now, more and more, there's great opportunity in actually taking the sustainability route. So you don't have to be a complete eco warrior of a company these days to start making those decisions. You can convince everyone in the business, even the naysayers, that actually this is better for the business, both now and in the longer term. And how can we cross that divide of regulatory frameworking through to actually taking decisions and please those stakeholders that go from employees all the way through to investors and customers, etc. So why are organizations struggling at the moment? And currently, tools are not really built for modern businesses. They're not built for ever-changing regulations. I'm not sure there's any other sort of space where the alphabet soup changes so rapidly as it does with sustainability regulations. So tooling is not built to support that at the moment. And for us, we believe the only way to do this is to utilize AI to its maximum capabilities. Current tools, to give everyone a bit of a background, those who might not be up to speed with it, they tend to rely on manual and approximated measurements. So that impacts accuracy, it impacts reliability of data, but at the moment, it suffices. It suffices for certain reporting requirements. You can put caveats in your sustainability report to say why you couldn't measure certain emissions, but it's not enough to actually make those strategic decarbonisation decisions. If you look at a global organisation that has thousands of locations, how can it make decisions on where to put solar panels in or what vehicles to retrofit if it's getting general aggregated data and only getting it in parts of the world that it operates in? It's very, very hard to make a decision that might upfront cost the business a certain amount of capital. Very hard to make that decision without having the data to back it up. And this approach tends to mean annual disclosures require a really substantial effort from dozens, if not hundreds of employees that don't have this as their day job. So sustainability isn't necessarily something that they're hugely interested in or hugely minded by, and yet they're having to fill in data to a spreadsheet, for example, on an annual basis or perhaps a monthly basis. This leaves it prone to errors or missing data, which again opens up the sort of risks that we don't want. Greenwashing risks, not being able to make decisions, inactionable data, all sort of phrases, certainly with inactionable data. It's all stuff we've heard in other parts of the business. If we look at finance and bookkeeping, the same journey happened there. Everything was done on spreadsheets. It's a huge amount of data, and that's moved into the world we have now of zeros and sages to automate that process. And we really need to see that process on the sustainability front, because these limited capabilities and limited data sets really hinder the ability for businesses to make progress. It's a competitive disadvantage in new markets, for example. It costs more money, operational expenses are higher, and non-data driven decisions essentially can result in reputational damage. If we look at greenwashing, where there's many examples, I don't really want to mudsling too much, so I'll pick some companies that are able to cope. But the likes of EasyJet and H&M have had big scandals because of greenwashing claims. And I don't think, in general, if we look at the good in the world, I don't think businesses are doing this to hoodwink everyone. I think it often comes down to a lack of data not enabling them to inform their decision making. So that leads to
yes. I have a quick question, actually. Sorry to interject. So when you're talking about data measurement and management, are you talking only about emissions data or any other type of data as well?
No, great question. I think it crosses the ESG spectrum. So I think primarily I'm talking emissions on the PowerPoint presentation slide there, but it's absolutely right. Social and governance is also causing a great deal of issues. I mean, GRI disclosures, I think there's 186 disclosures within that across ESG. And so what we're finding with organizations is they're using, sometimes it is all on spreadsheets, different spreadsheets for what they're doing for GHG accounting, different spreadsheets for what they're doing for TCFD, different spreadsheets for GRI, and everyone in the business is sort of contributing in different ways. And actually centralizing that data alone is really important, because a lot of these frameworks have huge overlap. So if you're not able to centralize it, it becomes very, very difficult to actually streamline that process. But absolutely, across that ESG spectrum, these challenges are replicated, not purely on the emissions side, we do find.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nadia. So the impact of that is companies are struggling to meet their objectives. So I've got a few figures to throw at you. So the IBM Institute for Business Value, they surveyed 2,500 senior executives across 22 industries and 34 countries. And there's some interesting figures that came out of this. 76% of executive respondents, they agreed or strongly agreed that their organization focuses on achieving ESG outcomes, not just reporting requirements. But 95% of them said
oh no, is it just me or others as well? Is Hugh frozen? All right, hopefully it comes back in just a second or so. Otherwise, we're definitely taking a screenshot of his face right now. As we're waiting, again, folks, don't let me be the only one talking. Feel free to if you guys have questions or any comments, to pipe up as well. And if you feel more comfortable, obviously post it in the chat. But yeah, definitely don't want this just to be a presentation where Hugh is talking at us. And likewise, he said the same. So feel free to engage if he comes back at all. Let me message him on another platform real quick.
Well, I'm waiting for the hack Bevan to get connected again, and then asking him a question. I mean opinion.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Oh, poor guy. Okay, let's see. Hopefully we don't lose you all in the meantime, but I'll see.
I think he's on his way back in.
All right, amazing.
He got cut off his Wi-Fi.
Thanks, Jared.
No problem.
Are you one of his coworkers?
I am indeed, fortunately enough.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you can just replace
I'd love to take on his responsibilities with presentation, but he's much better versed than I am. So I'll pass the conch back over to you, Hugh.
Thanks, Jet. Sorry about that. I don't know why the office Wi-Fi just cut out, but I noticed fairly quickly, so I wasn't rambling on to myself for too much. So let me share again. I'm not sure specifically where I cut off. But I think it was, well, it probably serves me right.
I think you just said 70-something% had said, and then it was like a cliffhanger.
Yes, so it serves me right for giving everyone a load of stats. So I'll quickly finish off. So it was about 3 in 4 surveyed. So 73% said their organisations are struggling to manage an overload of manual data. So and then 7 and 10, to our point we've just talked about, Nadia, they have a difficulty consolidating that data as well and manipulating that data. So that gives a bit of background as to why we're in this position and why we need to make changes, and really why Net Zero exists and uses AI to sort of help organisations with this piece. So a bit of a note: it's very hard to measure, as we've established. It's very difficult to comply. The larger the organisation, the harder this becomes. And really, what we're looking to do is go beyond that. It becomes even more challenging to reduce. And I've got a few examples here of news articles that have come out. So the biggest impact of all of this is that collectively it leads to inaction. So lots of targets being set, but none really being hit. The credible plans aren't being seen. And I think this is a symptom of waiting for regulations to drive things. So that's why Net Zero is in existence. And I'm going to show you a few bits and pieces about how we look to solve those challenges. And the first piece is at the very start. So the data collection piece is one that's often overlooked when reporting is the end goal. If reporting is the end goal, you don't need the granular level detail. You don't need the traceable data. So within Net Zero, we're looking to automate that part for first and foremost. So we've got over 10,000 integrations. That's with utility providers, with software providers. We can also directly integrate with smart meters, which takes us way above the 10,000 integrations, for example. But wherever that primary data is sitting, we're looking to automate the collection of that data from invoices, ERP accounting, supply chain data, IoT sensors, as I mentioned there. That will then feed into the platform, which will automatically calculate those emissions. And a key element of using AI is accuracy. So if this is done manually, the number of emission factors that a company has access to is fairly limited. We have our own data scrapers. We also connect up to databases like Climatic. So we have one of, if not the largest set of emission factors available to use, and the platform will automate that calculation straight away. And the output is we've got auditable carbon reports. So the data is already flowing from the primary data sources. It flows through the platform using GHG aligned emission factors. So the audit process is much, much quicker for our audit partners using the Net Zero platform. We're GHG aligned, we're SASB, IFRS and GRI certified. So the report making process becomes a real comparative doddle, let's say, versus the manual process. Decarbonisation pathways is the big one, and that's what we'll be moving on to shortly. We're utilising the marginal abatement cost curve, benchmarking, reduction planning at the local level. So we work with clients of all sizes, but we're tending to target the largest enterprise and Fortune 500 companies globally. And what we see, and you'll see it yourselves, is there's organizational level reduction targets set. But depending on where you sit in that organizational structure as a brand or as a location, it's going to look very different, actually, how you decarbonize. We can take an example. If there's I suppose, an all-in-one manufacturing through to retailer company, there'll be a head office. Head office is going to decarbonize very differently to the factory. It's going to decarbonize very differently to the logistics arm. So being able to sift through that data is where the first part really comes in. If we can automate data collection from all those different sources and collect billions of data points versus hundreds in a spreadsheet, you have the data to make those decisions. And that feeds into simulations, target setting, and even more complex stuff when we get into the decision-making side of it, which is internal cost of carbons, which projects to prioritize, which doing really cost-benefit analysis is on the fly. So that's the solution. That's the sort of crux of what we're doing. And we'll move into a bit more information as we go now. So the case for decarbonisation. So I mentioned earlier on the call that sort of historically sustainability is looked at a cost. Has looked to be a cost center, sorry. But these days, there's so many things that we can do that can provide either immediate impact or longer term impact. So energy savings has a bit of both. Smart meters, or even we've got our own sub meters we can put in now, where companies can identify quick win energy savings, or even at the appliance level. So what needs to be done at those levels to create quick wins? One of the things we see a lot of in factories and warehouses is simple things like using LED lighting. That can create actually over the longer term quite big savings. Efficiency gains, OPEX reductions, access to green financing, for example, or green subsidies is a key one. Government spending, I think the latest figures, is going to contribute to about 20% of the funding required for us to get to net zero targets and reach the Paris Climate Agreement. So the earlier you act, the more of that green subsidies you'll be able to get hands on. So really driving that action now has so many benefits, alongside the more serious stuff, I suppose, of climate risk mitigation, compliance, avoiding greenwashing claims, all of that sort of stuff. And so I wanted to give a few examples of what can be seen. So when you get access to granular data, so the Urban Land Institute found that simply asking guests to hang up towels to dry instead of daily washes can take 25% off hotel operators' annual energy costs. And Clarion Partners, a hotel operator, does this at all their hotels, and they've got reduced toilet flush flows and faucets and shower heads and things like that. And it saved them, each hotel, $17,250 per year. So there's genuine cost savings to be made. A really early mover in this, 2007, M&S in the UK, Marks and Spencer's, big retailer, grocery store, they published their Plan A, which required suppliers to equip their products with sustainability attributes by the latest 2015. But after only 2 years, so by 2009, 2010, the break-even point of that plan had already been reached, and now it contributes tens of millions to the company's profit every year. So making sustainability decisions does pay, as well as it being the right thing to do. And one of the coolest things I've heard about is Exeter County Council in the UK. They had a swimming pool, a community centre swimming pool, and they were going to shut it down. They couldn't heat the pool. They didn't have the funding to do so. A large data centre was looking for planning permission. So the council said, if you put the data centre near to the swimming pool and we can use the waste heat, or someone came up with a suggestion, and we can use the waste heat from that data centre to heat the pool, we can say yes to the planning permission, you can build the data center, and we can keep the pool running. And I can share that article with you and the information. It's really cool what happens when you have these options available to you. But what is the challenge for organizations? The trouble is, for most of them, if not all of them, it's impossible to know where to start with the lack of data if you're doing things manually or even basic levels of automation. And getting to net zero or making considerable changes on the carbon front, it's not a one initiative game. It isn't doing one thing. It involves deep business transformation. And that's scary at the best of times, let alone without the relevant data. So what we've built, and this was launched on our website today, is a tool called Net Zero Blueprint, and it aligns the financial aspect of making sustainability decisions with the environmental goals of a business through the marginal abatement cost curve. So the marginal abatement cost curve, it's a tool that really highlights the cost to offset or reduce a ton of CO2. And Net Zero Blueprint brings this to the forefront of an organization's decision-making process. If we look at the screenshot there, on the right-hand side, where the curve goes up, that's all initiatives that have a net cost to the business. So some obvious examples are offsets, procuring regs, whereas if we go towards the left, we could have something like putting solar panels in with a hefty green subsidy. There's a net benefit to each ton of CO2 that's saved. But the challenge for organizations is, well, firstly, globally, we don't know all the initiatives that are available. So we've built a tool, we've built a solution, we've got a network, let's say an ecosystem of decarbonisation initiatives. And the key is when the data flows automatically from primary data sources, initiatives can be bolted on to those data sets. So I'll go back to solar panels. So solar panel being put on in the US with the green subsidies available there could be something to do straight away, versus somewhere else in the world where you have manufacturing plants that don't have a green subsidy. And one of the key things of this is you're plotting the decision-making process. So all of these early stage, all of these profit.
Oh no, Gerard.
Uh-oh. He was on a flow there as well. There was no stopping him except for the Wi-Fi. Let me reach out to him and make sure that he can get back in. And suggest that he uses it's 4G or something.
Yeah, I think that someone's out to get him. They're not liking what he's sharing.
Yeah.
No, but interesting so far. Fascinated how it's able to plot even with different offsets as well, taking into consideration things like subsidies and whatnot. It makes it quite smart. How about the rest of you? Any insights or questions so far?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, finally, yeah.
Yeah, sorry if I dropped out again there, but please fire away with any questions. I'm nearly finished, but if there are any burning questions, fire away.
I actually had another question, if no one else does. But also, I feel like I'm the only one asking questions, so I'm encouraging others to as well. But just to get started, and when you were saying you had what was it, 10,000 integrations in terms of supply of information, are those then, I guess, are they direct suppliers that provide that information, or are they like third-party sources that can gather that information from suppliers?
No, so we connect up with various systems. So if you think about your utility providers, we've got a tech that doesn't have to have API access. So we can use our AI, let's say, to go in, collect the data from. I mean, if we use the example of our home electricity, for example, lots of people now, you can log in, you can see your invoices, you can see your platform. We've got tooling that can do that across utilities, corporate travel, and we've got the typical software integrations. So SAP Concur for business travel, for example, or ERP systems, cloud accounting for purchasing. So a real network of integrations that don't all require API access, because that limits the ability to find that actual source primary data.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
No problem at all. Well, if there weren't any questions, I will finish quickly before. I don't know whether it's because it's late where I am in Dubai and the Wi-Fi keeps cutting out, but I'll try and get going before it cuts out again. So the idea of this tool is it helps companies plot their reductions. And I don't know where I cut off, but the really cool thing is the unprofitable bits on the right-hand side won't necessarily be unprofitable forever. Offsets will, for example.
You've got to reshare your screen, I think.
Oh, of course. Thank you, Jet. I will do that. Okay. Hopefully that's coming through for everyone.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, perfect. So on the right-hand side, those unprofitable ones, we can wait for technology to improve. So for large businesses, and certainly in the harder to abate sectors, it's hard to make decisions straight away, because if you look at construction, it's very hard for a construction company to build a skyscraper without using concrete. So what can we do now to help companies abate what they can whilst technology improves over time. And that's what this tool allows companies to do. It allows to give them a view of all of their emissions at all locations, at all sources, along with a credible decarbonisation plan based on data. And the tool at the end, it gives data-driven decision making. So we can actually look at a framework, and this is custom to each organization. What do they want to achieve? How quickly do they want to achieve their goals? And the tool then recommends the most profitable initiatives based on those data sets. And tweaks can be made. Of course, if you're going to electrify a fleet, you can choose a Tesla, the very expensive one, I can't remember what it is, or you can choose the Renault Twingo or the EV version. So there's different cost initiatives that can be put in to really tailor it. But up front, there's an automated approach to plot that course of action and help companies start to take action, move beyond measuring, beyond reporting, and take action. And that's the real key that we're trying to achieve at Net Zero, is supporting organizations in finding the best ways to do business and supporting sustainability teams in actually having the data to back up what they want to do, those green initiatives. They can provide a profitable route to making these decisions rather than just a nice to have. They can become really mission critical. And just as a sort of finishing off, we are trying to solve, I said it at the start, but we're looking to solve the world's biggest problem with climate change using the world's most powerful technology, which is artificial intelligence, to help companies take action and really drive towards those net zero goals and work towards a more sustainable and better planet for future generations. So I must apologize to everyone for keep cutting out there. I hope you got the gist of it, or hopefully more than a gist, and understood what I was coming across with there. But I'd love to open it up to some Q&A or anything anyone would like to add.
Thank you, Hugh. And yes, definitely open up to the floor. That was a very insightful presentation, and also congrats on launching the new product. It's very exciting. I think it's at least I haven't seen anything like it before, so that's quite intriguing. And hopefully can be helpful to a lot of people also. Yeah, and I guess one is generally around using AI tools as a source to help people measure their impact, their emissions in the first place, and then having tools like yours available as well. I'll make a little bit of a pitch of if please find out more about Net Zero. Please use we have an affiliate link with you guys, so check them out through that, because that'll help us keep our lights on, if anything, too. But yeah, it's really fascinating to hear more about the tools that are currently being used. AI for me is still quite a new area too in terms of these insights. So we've got a couple of questions. Oh, and actually scrolling up, there was one question. Please remind us, the two companies you greenwash shamed were H&M and what was the other one again?
EasyJet. So EasyJet, they, just to give a bit of background, they said a few years ago they were going to offset against all their emissions and had no reduction plan, and rightfully everyone said, well, that doesn't seem like a great way to go as an airline. So
yeah. I mean, in general, there's a lot of we are going to achieve this, but there's no how or action plan put in place, which is the frustrating part, right?
Yes.
I mean, again, not to go hone in on your tool, but it's cool that it shows the actual hows of how you can help achieve that. So that's helpful.
Exactly.
From Tanya, and feel free to go off mute if you prefer. Otherwise, I'll read out your question.
Tanya, I can see it. Do you want to say it, or I can read it? So Tanya's asked, do I have a sense of the cost versus benefit based on general data, or do we have to input data? So there are some sort of generalizations that you can sort of take a punt at. So solar panels over a certain number of years are going to reduce your energy costs and potentially put stuff in the back into the grid, so you'll make your money back even without subsidies, things like that. LED lighting, there's some general data, but with this tool, what we're really looking to do is create a very evidence-based reduction plan. So it is based on granular and accurate data at the company level, because it's to sort of fit into the real decarbonisation pathway, we want it to be based on fact. And so when you utilize the tool requires that level of granularity. But I can share some information with you, Tanya, on the more generalized stuff. But there's kind of knowns. The unknowns are when you get to things like product level decarbonisation or appliance level. So working with hotel chains globally, you can save something like 20 to 30% of your emissions, and there's associated cost with that by changing the HVAC system. But that's for older HVAC systems, not always newer ones. And it's same if you look with vehicles. With vehicles, if you aggregate the data and say we buy X amount of fuel for our delivery trucks per month, per quarter, per year, you don't know actually which trucks are emitting the most. So can we plug into a telematics system or to the fuel card provider so we can actually get the vehicle level emissions and then say, and we've got an example of this. One of our clients was looking to electrify their fleet and put charging ports in their locations. They have global locations and they have a particular presence in Norway, and they were looking to do the electrification in the UK. And of course, Norway is 90% hydropower. So if you're going to put a charging station somewhere and you're going to spend 5 million to do this, you should do it first and foremost in Norway because the emission savings are greater than in the UK. And it's that sort of granularity that we're looking to help organizations with, because companies are trying to do the right thing. They just don't have the data. How can you know about the thousands of initiatives that are available, the hundreds and possibly thousands of green subsidies are available? And that's where we get to. So hopefully that's helped, Tanya, but do reach out. I can share some of the generalized stuff with you if you like as well.
And actually going in on that, so in terms of that granularity, how do you guys specialize in certain regions, or are you able to kind of scour that information no matter where? Or yeah, how do you guys focus, I guess, in terms of finding the finer detail and granularity?
Yeah, so there's multiple challenges when it comes to the granularity of data. Firstly is the availability of it. So if companies don't have access to certain primary data, we aren't suddenly going to find it. But what we do find is, I'll use the vehicles example as this is a common one. Lots of companies are using, especially when they've got logistics arms, are using telematics systems. They're using fuel cards to track cost. We can plug into those systems so that instead of them saying, look, let's just aggregate the data so we've got a figure that we can put to a report, we can plug into the system and say, well, we can actually utilize some of this data to get much more granular emissions data for you. But that isn't available everywhere in a company. So we don't promise that 100% of data is going to be automated, especially with the largest companies in the world. It just doesn't happen. And another challenge, although I would say, just as a caveat to that, scope 1 and 2, we're pretty high percentage, and often if the data is there, we can automate most of it. Scope 3 gets a little bit more difficult, or a lot more difficult, should I say. Another factor when you're looking at a global aspect of it is emission factors. So we are always looking to use the most accurate emission factor available, and we've got public data sources, we've got private data sources that we plug into, but there's areas of the world where they don't have up-to-date emission factors for their particular location, so you have to use the best available. And we think the only way to do that is to use tech. I mean, I've seen audited sustainability reports for global companies that use one set of emission factors, like the IEA emission factors, and that again impacts any ability to actually decarbonize. So we go for as accurate as possible, but once you identify those gaps of data, we can then work to improve them. So that's often a first step. Let's see what we can get most accurately now. Where are the gaps? Where are you using more estimations of emission factors than we possibly could be? And how do we identify more accuracy moving forward?
Got it. Yeah, and because I guess that's also from more of the supply side, but then it looks like, as you mentioned, you guys also look into like subsidies and kind of the offsetting side. How do you find those, or how do you focus on where to find those more?
Yeah, so we look to partner up when with offsets, for example. We have our own views on offsets, and we think they're a definite tool in the decarbonisation journey, but they're needed to sort of offset against unavoidable emissions or very hard to abate emissions right now. So our tool, and we say, look, we're going to go to a company, we can plot a path for you, we can empower you to plot a genuine decarbonisation path. But if you don't have the money to do everything right now, or it's going to take, I mean, contracts is a big one. If you're stuck into contracts and you can't do things, what are you going to do? You've got a story provided by the data to say, this is how we think we can get to net zero. This is what we're doing right now. We're spending X amount to do this right now. But for 5 years, we're not going to be able to change how we build a skyscraper. We have to continue using concrete. So we've decided to use the most expensive project available, which is carbon capture, because it's so heavy emitting. Or we're working with a tourism company, and they want to offset against specific locations, so that they can say we're supporting the local community where we're sending tourists, because we can't do anything about those emissions right now, and probably won't be able to unless we ban travel for everyone. But it's that sort of having the storyline and having something to say about your decarbonisation journey, rather than an EasyJet saying, okay, we're an airline, we can't do anything, so we're just going to offset everything. It's about creating a story. And on the supplier side, it's a process. It's how can we find the most accurate data available right now, and then move along that journey to getting to engaging the supplier themselves and actually getting that primary data source. But there's a lot that can be done up front, especially for organizations that have large suppliers. We can actually take a lot of data from their publicly disclosed accounts and sustainability reports. So that's often a first step. And then you can say, look, we've estimated the emissions to be X. Are you doing anything like using recycled materials? And then it opens the conversation much more as a helping environment, rather than just saying, look, give us all the data you have, because lots of suppliers don't have this data readily available. So it's one key thing, I suppose, is because we're using AI, we can very easily create non-one-size-fits-all approaches, which I think is key, really. If you use one-size-fits-all, it just doesn't work for complex organizations. And any organization has a complex scope 3. No matter what size, it gets complex.
Right, exactly. And as you said, I think it's tackling the things that can be easily done first. And sorry, yes, by offsets, I realized I used a confusing word. I actually meant financial offsets, like subsidies, not the offsets instead. Because offsets. Well, let's tackle the low-hanging fruit first.
Yes, I'll quickly cover that one as well. I know Olga's got questions, so I'll stop waffling if I can. But the subsidies piece is we're using our own sort of web crawlers that we've used to get emission factors and other bits. We also have in-house experts and a suite of consultants that give us information as well. But primarily, we can find a lot of this data because it's publicly available, and where it's not publicly available, we do have partnerships with governments globally. About 5 or 6 governments we work with in various capacities. Some of that involves subsidies, but a lot of that information is publicly available, and we can pull it into a system. And look, it's not you don't click on an initiative, click on it, and the government gives you all the money. There's a process that has to be gone through by the organisation. We can't do everything, but we can plot that route, say what subsidies are typically available at that location, and where to sort of go and find them. But it's just a database of that information that you can't collate as an individual person or as in a group of people. Oh, you're on mute, Nadia. But
oh, sorry. I said thank you firstly. We've got a question from Olga. Olga asks, are you providing any benchmarks?
So the benchmarking piece, within the platform, benchmarks can be set. So often, I mean, an easy one is baselining and versus benchmark versus employee numbers. There's different internal metrics that people use. We can also help companies plot themselves against industry benchmarks. We don't provide benchmark. If the question is, do we provide benchmarks of what our customers are doing or different industries that our customers are in? None of that is shared. That is all customer data that's in their own portals that are in. We don't even have access to it ourselves unless they want us to have a login. So that's all sacrosanct, I think. But within the tool, you can plot yourself against industry benchmarks, against country benchmarks, and also do your own benchmarks so you can track performance.
And another one from Tanya. Sorry if I missed this. What is the cost of the tool and how many users?
Yes, so we've got a pricing page on our website, which may be easier to go to. We don't like to limit on users typically. There are typical limits. I think our base price is about $12,000 per annum. And it goes up there depending on the complexity. We like to get as many people involved as we can, to be honest, on the user front. So for our larger organizations, we are using an unlimited user policy. We want, in practice, it's not totally unlimited, but in theory, it is. It's sort of hundreds and hundreds of users, because we want marketing teams to get involved. When you've got the level of data that you can get using AI to collect it and report on it, the level of analytics that can be done is great. And one thing we're seeing with some of our customers already is putting an initiative in place, and then 3 months later, because it's being tracked automatically, actually being able to deliver an update rather than doing it once a year. But Tanya, please do reach out. We can jump on a call. That's our list pricing. It's as much as we try and be a sort of a SaaS pricing model, it's much more complicated than that, because we do try and work with specific projects and use cases if we can. So do get in touch if you want to have further discussion on that.
Any other questions?
Sure, I can ask one quickly. Hi, I'm Lauren. I work at the Ivy Business School, just in London, Ontario, Canada. I'm in the Center for Building Sustainable Value, and two of our researchers currently right now, a lot of our researchers are working in the agri-food sector, but two is a huge emitter, obviously. But two of our researchers are working on pathways to net zero. One of them was just published, Corporate Strategies for Net Zero, and another was working on pathways for net zero specific to manufacturing industries. And I'm wondering if you, to the extent to which you can share, you mentioned a few areas where companies stumble, high upfront costs, and longer term gain, but past the point that they're at the data collection stage and they have whatever data is available, can you comment on some general trends where you see companies starting to fall short of their targets? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see across the board? I'd imagine it's industry specific too, but if you can speak in general terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lauren. And there are some generalities to it. And one of the main ones for certainly larger organizations we speak to and larger customers, and it was phrased well by a customer of ours, is initiative-itis, where people from different locations all have an idea. And you see this, like something will be in the news in a particular location, like heat pumps was in the news recently in the UK. So everyone then wants to use heat pumps. EVs has been in the news for recent years. So everyone wants to look at EVs. And so there's a load of ideas that are happening, and there's no way to actually make a decision. And that's something we see with larger organizations. Another theme is just getting started. I think is there's some obvious things, and you'll see this in sustainability reports. I'll come on to agriculture in a second as well, but there's something that's easy to do. We can move to renewable energies, for example. We can change our tariff, but it doesn't involve business transformation. And the more transformation that's required, the more difficult it is to actually do this thing internally. You have to get more stakeholders involved, and the ESG team are trying to get finance involved. They're trying to get procurement involved, and the CEO tends to want to get involved. So lots of different things happening. And I hate to keep coming back to the data, but it's why we exist. It's because the underlying data doesn't exist to actually help make those decisions. So those are a couple of themes. And then with agriculture, it goes beyond that. It's so hard to calculate the emissions of. I was talking earlier with a prospect about this, where if you're making, they're a retailer, if you're making we kept using was it lasagna? No, shepherd's pie as an example. calculating the emission of the cow that gave the beef to the lasagna, all of that is very generalized at the moment. There are some more accurate things coming out, but that makes it even harder in those sorts of sectors. So what we try and do is plot the route that's available now and wait for technology to catch up on those other bits. Sorry, Lauren, I waffled a bit there. Hopefully that helped.
No, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. Any other questions? If not, I have perhaps a final question. And more around, so given the work that you guys do, what have you encountered that businesses find the most challenging still, even if they have tools like yours? So what is the biggest hurdle that would be helpful to get over?
Yeah, I think I'll come up with a new one, because I keep talking about data. I think it is still data, but I think if you speak to ESG professionals within companies, there's a fear of how are we going to actually do this? How are we going to get to net zero? I've spoken to lots of sustainability professionals that are part of companies that have set targets, sometimes years ago, and they had no idea how they were going to get there at the time, because the regulations at the time said you need to set a target. So everyone said, okay, we're going to set a target. And now we're getting closer to deadlines. There's interim targets of 2030 even. And people are worried. They say, there's a lot of pressure on us to do this. There's so much burden on them to report to different frameworks. I was speaking to a client, they report to 6 frameworks. And it's when you're navigating that with a big target on your head, it is a tough position to be in. But I do think in general everything's going in the right way. I think there's other tools out there. There's really cool things happening in the decarbonisation space, and I think the frameworks are aligning, and I think it will make things easier once that happens over the next, hopefully less than a few years. But once that's all aligned and we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, I think this stuff will become a bit easier. But I think there is a fear of how we're going to hit these targets. I do hear that a lot, certainly for those that have been set targets.
Exactly, and ultimately you can't manage what you can't measure, right? So it does start with that.
Exactly.
Great. Unless we have any other questions, we might wrap it up. Any other last minute questions? No? All right. Well, you guys know how to get in touch with Hugh and the team at Net Zero. So feel free to do so. Oh, no, I think you froze again. Man, that timing. Oh, wait, you're back. Okay, great. Only a blip. So yeah, wrapping up anyway. So thank you so much, Hugh. That was really informative and insightful. And it's great to know that there are tools like yours out there to make lives a little bit easier and for us all to work towards net zero. Please, everyone, feel free to get in touch with Hugh and Net Zero. And then likewise, if there's anything we can do at Forward VC, if you're not already a member of our Climate Techies community, we have about 13,000 subscribers and 3,000 members across our Slack and WhatsApp channels, and everyone's out there to support in order to move towards that right direction. So without further ado, let's close it up. And again, thank you so much, Hugh.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Thank you to Forward VC as well. And thanks everyone for joining. And please do reach out and get in touch if you want to discuss anything further.
Sounds good. Take care. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.